In the quiet neighborhood of Frederick, Colorado, life seemed to flow like any other American dream. Nestled among neatly trimmed lawns and picket fences, the Watts family resided in a modest home, blending seamlessly into the tapestry of their community. Chris Watts, a friendly and unassuming man, worked hard to provide for his family. His wife, Shanann, was the vibrant heart of their household, juggling the responsibilities of motherhood with grace and warmth. Together, they shared the joys and challenges of raising their two young daughters, Bella and Celeste. To their neighbors, the Watts family was the epitome of suburban bliss, a picture-perfect representation of the American dream. Their home echoed with laughter and love, and their presence brought a sense of warmth to the neighborhood. As they went about their daily lives, Chris and Shannon appeared to have it all: a loving marriage, beautiful children, and a promising future ahead. They were admired and respected by those around them, their lives a shining example of success and happiness. Little did anyone know that beneath the facade of perfection, darkness lurked, waiting to shatter the illusion of bliss. On August 13, 2018, Shanann Watts, a pregnant woman with sunshine in her smile, returned home from a business trip. Her friend Nicole dropped her off at the house around 1:48 a.m. Inside, Chris, her husband, awaited her with their two daughters, 5-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste. But the seemingly ordinary homecoming was the last anyone would see of Shanann and the girls. The following day, alarm bells started ringing. Shanann missed a doctor's appointment, her phone went unanswered, and an unsettling silence hung over the Watts residence. Nicole, filled with a gnawing worry, went to check on her friend. The house was empty, the swing set eerily still. Panic surged through the neighborhood. Calls were made, messages sent, but there was no response. News of the missing family spread like wildfire. Friends, family, and neighbors rallied together. Search parties scoured the area, their hope dwindling with every passing hour. Law enforcement arrived. Shanann's concerned friend and neighbor met with the police, divulging troubling details about Shanann's disappearance. They had returned from a business trip together, and the neighbor had dropped Shanann off at home the previous night. However, Shanann was nowhere to be found. This was deeply concerning, especially considering Shanann's pregnancy at 15 weeks and her missed appointment. Her distress was palpable, evidenced by her refusal to eat or drink. Adding to the complexity of the situation was the revelation that Shanann's husband had disclosed their separation to Nicole earlier that day, unbeknownst to Shanann herself. The neighbor also noted significant observations. Shanann's shoes neatly positioned by the door and her car still parked in the garage. This information heightened the police's concern as they approached the Watts family home to investigate. Encountering a locked door with a passcode, the police attempted to gain access by checking around the back of the house and knocking on the door. However, they needed consent from Chris Watts, who was nowhere to be found. Despite Shanann's friend's earnest pleas for the police to enter the home, the officer insisted that without visual confirmation of a body, they couldn't legally enter the property. Peering through the glass of the front door, the house appeared immaculate, with furniture arranged perfectly as if it were a showroom. After an agonizing wait, Chris Watts, Shanann's husband, finally arrived at the property and greeted the police with a handshake, noticeably ignoring Nicole, Shanann's friend. The police then commenced their search of the home. When questioned by the police about Shanann's potential whereabouts or possible acquaintances, Chris mentioned the possibility that she might be with her parents or out of state. However, the investigation took a sudden turn when Nicole, Shanann's neighbor and friend, approached them, drawing attention to Shanann's phone. Adding to the unfolding drama, a neighbor provided the police with CCTV footage from his outdoor camera. As a crowd gathered to watch, the atmosphere grew tense. This pivotal moment became a turning point in the investigation. Chris, visibly nervous and anxious, watched the footage closely, aware of the scrutiny upon him, especially from the neighbor who had supplied the footage. The footage itself revealed crucial moments. Chris backing his truck into the driveway in the early hours of the morning and loading what appeared to be multiple items into the vehicle. These images heightened suspicions about Chris's involvement. Back at the house, Chris, his face etched with worry, spoke to the media. A neighbor's surveillance footage captured him loading his truck with suspicious items in the early hours of the morning on the day of the disappearance. Phone records revealed cryptic text messages and calls made to his mistress in the days leading up to the incident. Despite his outward displays of grief, Chris's demeanor betrayed a sense of unease, his expressions often appearing rehearsed and detached. When confronted with inconsistencies in his accounts, his responses grew increasingly evasive, further fueling suspicion. In a last-ditch effort to clear his name, Chris agreed to undergo a polygraph test administered by law enforcement. However, his hopes of vindication were dashed when the results indicated deception. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the mounting pressure of scrutiny, Chris's facade finally crumbled. On August 15, 2018, Chris Watts confessed to the unthinkable. He had murdered his wife Shanann in a fit of rage and then proceeded to smother their daughters, Bella and Celeste, before disposing of their bodies at an oil site where he worked. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. The details Chris revealed in his confession painted a picture more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. In the pre-dawn hours of August 13, 2018, when Shanann returned home from her trip, a storm brewed within the Watts household. An argument erupted, the details lost to the darkness of the night. In a moment of unspeakable rage, Chris strangled Shanann, snuffing out the life that pulsed within her and the dreams they once shared. The unthinkable became reality for Bella and Celeste. Awakened by the commotion, they stumbled upon the horrific scene, their tiny eyes witnessing a nightmare no child should ever face. Fear choked their cries as Chris, his face contorted in a mask of fury, turned his murderous rage on his own daughters. With a callous disregard for the innocents he was supposed to protect, he smothered Bella and Celeste, silencing their laughter forever. Consumed by a desperate need to conceal his crimes, Chris embarked on a chilling cleanup operation. He loaded Shanann's body into his truck, the weight of his actions a heavy burden. His daughters, still and lifeless, were placed in the back seat. He drove them to a remote oil field where he worked, a place familiar to him, a place where his dark secret could be buried. One by one, he disposed of their bodies, Shanann in a shallow grave, Bella and Celeste in oil tanks, their tiny forms swallowed by the darkness. The American dream house stood silent, a monument to a family fractured beyond repair. The idyllic facade now a chilling reminder of the evil that lurked within. The trial that followed the horrific events of August 13, 2018, was a harrowing journey through the depths of human depravity. As the courtroom doors swung open, the weight of the crimes hung heavy in the air, casting a pall over all who bore witness to the proceedings. Prosecutors laid out a damning case against Chris Watts, presenting a mountain of evidence that left no doubt as to his guilt. Surveillance footage, phone records, and forensic analysis painted a chilling picture of premeditation and malice aforethought. Witnesses took the stand, recounting the events leading up to the murders and the chilling details of Chris's confession. Their testimony served as a reminder of the innocent lives lost and the devastation wrought by one man's unfathomable actions. In the end, justice prevailed as Chris Watts was sentenced to multiple life terms without the possibility of parole. The judge's words echoed through the courtroom, condemning Chris to spend the remainder of his days behind bars, stripped of his freedom and forced to confront the magnitude of his crimes. Though the trial marked the culmination of a long and painful journey for the victims' families, the scars left by Chris Watts' actions would never fully heal. their lives forever altered by the senseless violence that tore their loved ones away from them. They were left to grapple with the enduring pain of loss and the enduring legacy of tragedy. The Watts house stood vacant, a monument to a shattered dream. A weed-strewn for sale sign rattled in the wind, a stark contrast to the cheerful welcome mat that once greeted visitors. Life in Frederick moved on, but the memory of the tragedy lingered. Parents held their children a little tighter, whispering reassurances in the dark. The American dream, once seemingly embodied by the Watts family, now bore a chilling caveat. Beneath the picture-perfect facade, darkness could lurk, a constant reminder that appearances can be deceiving. Shanann's family, forever haunted by their loss, found solace in sharing her story. They channeled their grief into advocacy, working to prevent domestic violence and protect vulnerable families. Bella and Celeste's laughter, though silenced, became a beacon of hope, a reminder to cherish the innocence of childhood. As for Chris Watts, he faded into the sterile walls of his prison cell, his life a monotonous echo of the one he so ruthlessly destroyed. The perfect family, the happy home, all a cruel illusion shattered by a single act of unspeakable evil. The story of the Watts family serves as a chilling reminder, a cautionary tale whispered on the wind. Sometimes the greatest monsters wear the most familiar faces. Kaylea Louise Titford, a bright and energetic 16-year-old, was subjected to neglect and abuse by her parents, Sarah Lloyd Jones, 39, and father Alan Titford, 45. While most 16-year-olds are out with their friends or celebrating a sweet 16th birthday, Kaylea spent hers locked away and forced to live in squalor, where she met her demise. Kaylea, a resident of Newtown, Powys, Wales, attended Newtown High School. She was born with spinal bifida, a neural tube defect that occurs when a baby's spine and spinal cord fail to develop properly in the womb, resulting in a gap in the spine. This condition, often detected early in pregnancy, is believed to be influenced by various factors, including genetics and maternal diet. Spina bifida can manifest in various forms of severity, impacting motor function and mobility. Although she had this debilitating disability, that did not stop Kaylea from being fiercely independent, and she was described by teachers as a lovely, funny, and chatty girl who participated in PE lessons and also wheelchair basketball. In 2020, amidst the global lockdown due to COVID-19, following government guidelines, she was instructed to isolate for 6 months to shield herself from the virus. During this period, she heavily relied on her wheelchair as her disability worsened. She had minimal contact with the outside world and limited interactions with anyone beyond her immediate family. This marked the beginning of escalating neglect. During her time of need, it was assumed that her parents were taking care of her, but this was far from the truth. Kaylea's weight began to climb to a staggering 22 stone and 13 pounds, and at 145 meters tall, she had a BMI of 70, significantly higher than her peers. This weight gain was fueled by her parents' excessive spending on takeaways and fast food, totaling £1,035 in the 3 months leading up to her death. Despite the pandemic making fresh fruits and vegetables difficult to access for many families, this was clearly not the case, as Kaylea's family were spending large amounts on fast food and fizzy drinks, fully aware of her deteriorating condition due to the high-fat, high-calorie meals. Not only was Kaylea neglected in terms of nutrition, but she also suffered from physical neglect. She had not showered or used the toilet for around 6 months prior to her death. Bedbound and confined to her room, usually defecating on her bed where urine bottles surrounded her. Kaylea often endured extreme discomfort, screaming for help that went unanswered by her parents. The school, deeply concerned for Kaylea's well-being, made multiple welfare check calls and inquired about her absence from online lessons. However, Kaylea's mother ignored most of these calls and fabricated excuses about her daughter's condition. Furthermore, Kaylea's parents declined assistance from Birmingham Children's Hospital and Youth Intervention Services. Before the onset of COVID-19, Kaylea attended school regularly until November 2019. However, her attendance declined due to a leg infection and experiences of bullying. Over just 3 years, Kaylea's weight surged from 17 stone to 23 stone, a concerning increase that went unreviewed and unrecorded in the 2 years leading up to her death, as reported. Despite Kaylea's disability, referrals were made to healthcare professionals in England and Wales, yet it appeared that no care plan was established. When other children resumed school in September 2020, teachers reached out to Lloyd-Jones, but she reportedly stated that her daughter was grappling with various health issues. Although Kaylea was scheduled to return on October 7th, she expressed feeling too unwell and anxious to do so. 3 days later, 16-year-old Kaylea was found deceased. On the morning of October 10, 2020, a distress call was placed by Titford's grandmother. She had called them after her son told her Kaylea was deceased in bed. Paramedics quickly responded to the scene and discovered Kaylea's lifeless body in bed. The emergency responders were immediately struck by a putrid odor emanating from the room. Kaylea's garments were visibly stained with feces and urine, her back displaying a deep purple hue and covered in painful sores. Upon arrival, officers found more than 100 flies stuck to flypaper above the bed where Kaylea lay dead. Shockingly, her armpits were nearly blackened, indicating prolonged neglect. Kaylea was morbidly obese, with filthy and matted hair. The bedroom was infested with maggots, and old food wrappers and remnants littered the room, alongside an old fridge, a pressure washer, and a greasy hip fryer. In a heart-wrenching discovery, a full cake lay untouched on a table from Kaylea's birthday weeks earlier. She had been incapacitated, unable to move herself, while her parents appeared to have offered no assistance. Furthermore, patches of her skin were found to be raw and split, with her tights described as painfully chafed. Upon this alarming discovery, clinical leader of the paramedics, Gareth Wynne Evans, attended the scene, wearing personal protective equipment, including a mask. He found Kaylea's body positioned upright, with her head drooped down on her chest. Evan removed the bedding atop Kaylea and was hit by a putrid, musky smell emanating from underneath the bedding, which was suspected to be gangrene. A strong odor of rotting flesh engulfed the room as Evans touched Kaylea's arm, confirming that she had passed away and rigor mortis had set in. Kaylea's death was a result of inflammation and infection in extensive areas of ulceration arising from obesity and its complications, compounded by her immobility due to spina bifida and hydrocephalus. Kaylea's parents were arrested, and court proceedings began, placing both her mother and father under scrutiny. Kaylea's mother pleaded guilty, while her father pleaded not guilty to manslaughter charges. Mr. Titford, aged 45, denied the charges against him, arguing that Kaylea's mother, Sarah Lloyd-Jones, was her main caregiver. During the trial, Titford admitted he was a lazy man who should have done more to help his daughter, but expressed discomfort in caring for her once she reached puberty. The prosecution argued that he could not absolve himself of parental duties by shifting all responsibility to the other parent.
I do not accept that either defendant has shown remorse that should count as significant mitigation. Alan Titford pleaded not guilty and even to the author of the pre-sentence report, blamed his partner and even his daughter.
The court heard that Kaylea was a vulnerable girl who relied on others to care for her well-being. She suffered from spinal bifida, resulting in limited sensation and mobility from the waist down, making her a wheelchair user from a young age. The prosecution argued that Kaylea's death resulted from the failure of both her mother and father to fulfill their duty of care towards her health and welfare. This included neglecting her nutritional needs, mobility, ensuring a clean and hygienic living environment, and seeking appropriate medical assistance when necessary. The prosecution highlighted that the national COVID lockdown starting in March 2020 concealed the severe neglect from outside scrutiny. During this time, Kaylea was bedridden, living in unsanitary conditions and suffering from inflamed and ulcerated skin. Prosecutor Caroline Reese KC stated that by the time of her death in October 2020, Kaylea was living in conditions deemed unfit even for animals, resorting to using puppy pads on her urine-soaked floor for toileting. This lack of duty of care created an evident and grave risk of death, as emphasized by the prosecution in court. Prosecutor Caroline Reese KC stated, Kaylea sent a series of tragic messages to her mum as she pleaded for help to clean her leaking legs and to get rid of baby flies landing on her. Kaylea repeatedly told her mother she was concerned about her legs, but Lloyd Jones replied, "For FK's sake." One message sent on September 12, 2020, just 1 month before her body was found, showed Kaylea saying to her mum, "My leg is leaking." Her mum replied, "For FK's sake, hang on," before Kaylea pleaded, "No mum, it's leaking." Kaylea also messaged her mum just 2 weeks before her death to plead for help getting rid of flies in her room, the court heard. She said, "It's little baby ones landing one me," while her mum replied, "They like you, LOL," but Kaylea said, "No, mum, they are annoying." The court heard Kaylea also messaged her mum days earlier to say, "Can you come and check I haven't pooed in a minute because it stinks?" The response from her mum was, "FFS," before Kaylea replied, "Why do you get mad? It's not my fault." 2 months before she died, Kaylea's older sister, Sophie, sent a message to Lloyd Jones raising concern about Kaylea's room. "Not being funny, but you need to sort Kaylea's room. It's a mess," wrote Sophie on 20th August 2020. "Nothing can be found because of what a mess it is. It's disgusting. Kaylea had a bag of piss left from this morning and yesterday on the floor. It's disgusting, Mum." After a 3-week trial at Mould Crown Court, Alan Titford, the father, was found guilty in January 2023. This marked the first instance in the UK where parents were prosecuted for manslaughter due to neglecting their child's weight. Typically, cases involving childhood obesity are handled in family courts. However, the neglect of Kaylea's weight was just one of the prosecutable failures in their parental duty of care as outlined by the court. These included failing to ensure Kaylea's physical activity, maintaining a safe and hygienic environment, meeting her health needs, and seeking necessary medical assistance. Sentencing took place at Swansea Crown Court on March 7th before Judge Martin Griffiths, whose remarks were televised. This marked Wales' first televised court hearing following a recent change in the law, allowing cameras in courtrooms. Alan Titford was sentenced to 7 years and 6 months, and Sarah Lloyd-Jones received a 6-year sentence. Judge Griffiths highlighted the equal responsibility of both parents. The Solicitor General referred the case for review under the unduly lenient sentences scheme. After a full hearing on May 19, 2023, the Court of Appeal increased their sentences. Sarah Lloyd-Jones's term was extended to 8 years and Alan Titford's to 10 years. Solicitor General Michael Tomlinson, KCMP, stated, "This case was deeply distressing, and my thoughts are with all who cared for Kaylea. The decision to extend the sentences sends a clear message that child abuse will not be tolerated." For many of us, the hospital is a sanctuary where we entrust our safety and find solace when we're unwell. Yet some may harbour apprehension or fear about going there, and I can empathise. The following account of hospital incompetence is just one among numerous distressing stories. In 2012, an elderly Brazilian woman from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil named Hilda Vitor Maciel found herself in a tragic situation while hospitalised. A stroke had left her paralysed on the left side of her body and reliant on a feeding tube to meet her nutritional needs. During her stay at the Santa Casa de Barra Mansa Hospital, a medical mishap occurred that may have cost her life, according to a medical malpractice and wrongful death lawsuit filed by her family. Maciel was mistakenly administered soup through an IV attached to her arm instead of her feeding tube. The nurse mistakenly injected soup into the catheter in Maciel's hand instead of through the feeding tube inserted into her nose. Promptly after the accident, Dos Santos recounted, "My mother's heart began to beat wildly. This error, witnessed by Maciel's daughter Ana Ruth Maciel dos Santos, led to distressing consequences. Despite signs of improvement in Maciel's stroke symptoms prior to the incident, she tragically passed away half a day later at the age of 88. The hospital admitted to the mistake, but refused to acknowledge the soup injection as the cause of Maciel's death, despite findings from her autopsy, as reported by Fox Law Philly. The family suspected the soup dosing as the culprit, expressing outrage and a demand for justice to prevent similar incidents from occurring in the future. While a doctor's report suggested that Maciel likely died from a pulmonary embolism, a condition where a blood clot obstructs a lung artery, her official cause of death on the death certificate remained undetermined. Due to the uncertainty surrounding her death and the recent medical error, the hospital ordered an autopsy. Hospital Administrative Director Álvaro Afonso Torres de Freitas stated, "Due to the misunderstanding and the doubt that remained, we decided to investigate." The hospital initiated an internal process and collaborated with Maciel's relatives to facilitate the autopsy. Pulmonary embolisms can be caused by various factors, including blood clots, tumours, air bubbles, or bone marrow fat from broken bones. What do you think about this true story? Should the hospital be held liable for such a mistake? Why was a trained nurse unable to distinguish between a hand catheter and a feeding tube? And do you think that was the cause of her death? Please comment below.